And again, we're just going to have a conversation
Yeah, we are.
with folks. So
And do I look at you?
yes, because we're just going to converse.
Yeah.
I'll be looking, unless someone throws something out.
Okay.
I will do an introduction to the camera and bring it
Okay.
in. All right. Good evening and welcome to What's Your Story? My name is Sean Higgins, and I wish I could say this had been planned the whole time, but isn't it appropriate that today is National Women's Day? And yeah, go ahead. Yeah. And we have a woman that we're sitting down with who is an educator, an administrator, a world traveler, a community leader in a number of different areas, and a walker. Please welcome Kathleen Clinton.
Hi, everybody.
World traveler, we'll get into that a little bit, but you are, can I say, a Hamilton gal? Is that
I
right?
was born right here in Hamilton, absolutely.
And where were you raised? What area of town?
I was raised on Milliken Street.
Actually, not far from where I am.
no.
Very good. Born and raised in Hamilton. What schools did you attend while you were growing up?
While I was growing up, I was in the old Adams School, which is now the school district's Miami School.
Okay.
It had become the Senior Citizens after it was no longer a school. And then I went to Wilson Junior High and Hamilton High, and then graduated in the first class of Taft.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very good. And someone was asking me today, and say, years ago, what were the first high schools? I said, well, I wasn't around for that, but I said Taft was over here. And after, now this is where I think it gets interesting. You found, you and I think you said a friend, a roommate or something, found this little college over in Indiana. What college is that?
Hanover College.
How did you find, and where is Hanover College?
Well, Hanover College is in Hanover, Indiana, and several of us who were classmates at Taft High School had heard about it. And so we decided as a small group of 4 or 5, that's where we were going.
But you didn't stay there.
I did not stay there. It was too small. It was smaller than my high school.
Okay, so that you thought it would be comfortable, but it was a little bit
Yeah,
small.
yeah.
So then you transferred to where of all places?
Well, Miami University and Oxford. Where else?
I was waiting for that. Now, and
Yeah.
what were you studying? What did you study at Miami?
I studied English and German. I was a liberal arts major, and those were my 2 fields.
Okay, and from there, what exciting field opened up for you after studying English and German?
What exciting field?
Yeah.
You mean like education?
So you ended up going back for education. I say because
I went back to school for all the courses I needed to take because I had none of those while I was at Miami.
What led you into education?
Probably mentors that I had in high school, particular teachers that meant a lot to me, that maybe kind of showed me the way that might be something you'd enjoy, Kathy, and so.
So you ended up having to go back so you can get those credits
Right.
to get your teaching certificate and have your degree in teaching. But you didn't start right away here in town, though, did you?
No, I did, actually. My first job was at Taft High School.
Okay.
Taft High School, in fact, the city of Hamilton never hired individuals directly out of college. They wanted you to already have prior experience. But Jackie Parrish, who's also a Hamilton resident, she and I applied, and they hired both of us right out of college.
Something different.
Yeah,
But you ended up traveling.
I did.
Where'd you go?
Well, I went, first of all, I got married.
Okay.
So I went, my former husband was a naval officer, and I went to Brunswick, Maine, to the Naval Air Station, and I was there for a while. And then he was transferred to the Philippines, and there wasn't an opening on the base for housing, so I came back here to Hamilton until the opening occurred, and then I went to the Philippines.
Were you able to teach in the Philippines?
No, I tried, but there were no openings. So I was the PX manager. But what was interesting, I spoke German, but everyone in the Philippines speaks Tagalog, and I knew no Tagalog
You
at
hadn't
all.
studied Tagalog at Miami?
No, I should have, shouldn't I? But I didn't.
Now, but somewhere along the way, you went to Germany.
I did. While I was at Miami, one of my German professors had been instrumental in putting together a program at Heidelberg University. And he said, Kathy, that's where you ought to go. So I was there. It was not an entire semester. It was like from May through September. So I went there.
But now you have German heritage.
Yes.
And you had family in the area.
Yes.
So you got to actually not only attend school, but see family?
Exactly. Some people I had never met before, some I had met and knew well, and yes, we had a wonderful time.
That's fantastic to be able to do that. So again, now you've been to Germany while you were part of Miami. You went to Maine, and then to the Philippines. How long were you in the Philippines?
We were to be there. I was to be there for a full year, but I was at the PX one day, and Warren came by with orders that he just put up on the window, and what does that say? He was extended from his 4-year stint, 1 more year because of Vietnam. So he was sent to Vietnam, and I came back again to Ohio.
And there's a kind of theme here where you keep coming back not only to Ohio, but to Hamilton.
Well, my parents were here.
So you had a place to come back to.
I had a spot.
And you also came back to Taft.
I did, but only for another year. And so when I came back after the Philippines, I didn't have a job. So I went to the Butler County Superintendent and said, help. And he said, you know, there's a school district called Lakota, and they're out there. And
way out there at that time.
Way out there, and they need a long-term sub. Are you interested? I said, sign me up.
And explain, I found this very interesting, that at that time you went to the Butler County Board of Education to find a job somewhere in Butler County. So it's a little bit different than what we have today with our school districts and school boards and so forth.
That's right, because we're talking about 100 years ago. We're way back.
No, we're not.
We're way back there. And the Butler County Board of Education had control over the local districts, not the city districts, but the local districts, like Lakota, Edgewood, New Miami, Ross. And so you went through them to be hired.
So, and that does not exist anymore? Not in that shape and form?
Right, it's all changed. So each school district now is independent, has their own Board of Education. And
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And I know some folks can attest to being out in Lakota or that Westchester area. One time was out in the middle of nowhere back then, the Pisgah area or whatever. So you started out as a long-term sub. At least you were hired as a long-term sub in Lakota. What school? What grade? What were you teaching?
I was a long-term sub in English at the high school.
And how long did you stay in that position?
Only from about January through May. Not even an entire semester.
Okay, and from there, you left again, is that right?
No, not exactly.
Not yet? I know you did at one point.
Yeah, I was hired to come back to Lakota full-time the following year, which I did. But after that year, Warren was back from Vietnam, and it was like, we're going to graduate school. And okay, where are we going? Well, he was or is an architect, and he wanted to study urban planning and landscape architecture, and the University of Virginia was his #1 choice. So we pack up our stuff and go to Charlottesville.
So you leave Hamilton again.
Yeah.
And you go to University of Virginia, you said Charlottesville?
Yeah.
And now he was studying architecture, landscape architecture. What were you looking for?
I wanted to have a degree in counseling. I decided I, at some point, was going to become a guidance counselor.
So you were dreaming, at least planning on moving your career forward from specifically education to counseling.
Right.
What drew you to counseling? Is there anything particular?
Perhaps just a strong enjoyment being with people and listening to people and working with people. I like that a lot, and I saw that as something I could do with high school age students.
Okay. And this is, again, specifically you were thinking of the Lakota School District, or you were going to come back to the Lakota School District?
Not necessarily. I was going to
Just
go
looking for
wherever he had a job.
Very good.
Yeah,
But you ended up coming back to Lakota.
I did.
And you became a guidance counselor in the school district. And at what size, how was the district growing at that time?
The district was very small, much smaller than anything I'd been used to. But because it was so small, and when I was hired, I was given a variety of jobs. I taught my first full year in Lakota after my master's. I taught English 1, German 1 and 2, and I was the guidance counselor for the entire freshman class.
So, again,
And I think my salary was about $9,000.
has it changed? Has it changed? So again, okay, so now your degree's paid off. You had that English and German degree from Miami, finally paid off. You have your master's in counseling that paid off, and you're doing both. And you start to progress a little bit in the administrative side of education.
Well, I had mentors again. I like challenges, and I had mentors who said, Kathy, you want to try this, want to try that. And I was always given something new and different to do. And as those challenges were unfolding and those opportunities, I went back to school to get all the credentials I needed to become an administrator. And then I was given the opportunity to become an assistant principal at Lakota High School.
I think it's interesting you brought up the point that there was, I guess, trust. People saw something in you. Was it, and I'm going to kind of bring this up a little bit since we started with this, was it kind of call it a man's world then in administration in the school districts?
Yeah, it was.
But yet you were looked on as an equal, or at least someone they could trust.
Someone they could trust and someone who would be straightforward, and we could have some honest conversations about situations, and yeah.
So
it was that mutual trust that just made a big difference.
You said you had mentors, so people really did see something in you that they wanted you to share at a higher level.
Wow.
You think so?
I don't know. It unfolded.
So so at that point, now Lakota does start to expand. Can you explain how you were involved and what was going on around as Lakota's district started to expand?
Well, the expansion occurred when I was assistant superintendent. While I was at the high school as assistant principal, it was pretty static. There wasn't much growth. But by the time in the early 80s into the 90s, we were growing 550 students from when school ended in June until we started in September. In fact, we had enough portable units on the grounds of the Lakota School District to have had a regular school. I mean, we didn't know where to put all of our students. They were just coming so quickly.
And so really, from the end of the school year to the beginning of the school year, did you know what you were going to end up starting with?
We could only project.
And now you're buying portable units
Oh, yeah.
and attaching them to different schools? Or
Right.
how did that?
Wherever there was property on a school site that would fit, that's what we would do. In fact, someone was saying to me, you know, Kathy, this is really interesting. My daughter is in elementary school, and we've never moved when she started in kindergarten, and I think maybe she was in the 5th grade. They were in the same home, but she was in 4 different elementary schools because we had to redistrict that many times. So it was chaotic, but we managed it.
So you were at that time during that expansion, you were the assistant superintendent.
And then moved into being superintendent during that same growth period.
And let's talk about the assistant superintendent. You were one of 2. What was your main job in your assistant superintendent?
My title was assistant superintendent for instruction and curriculum. So I worked with classroom teachers as we articulated the curriculum kindergarten through the 12th grade in all the various subject matters or grade levels.
There, again, with the educator in mind. Now, we moved to the Lakota expansion. From one of the assistant superintendents, how did you become superintendent?
Through the interview process.
It really was.
Oh, yeah. Yes, they hired a firm and did the search, and I don't know how many candidates they had or anything, but they narrowed it down to a couple of us, and I was one of those.
Very good. And now the expansion starts to happen. What does your job look like now as superintendent, moving from assistant superintendent to superintendent with this expansion going on? What all are you doing?
Pretty much everything, as we're again trying to figure out how do we get on the ballot so that the residents are comfortable with passing a bond issue to build a school, passing an operating levy to staff the school. How do we find enough property within the confines of Liberty Township and Westchester Township in order to build these schools? How do we do all of that and maintain a solid academic program, because that had to be number one.
That's what you were coming up through
Absolutely.
the education. Now,
Yeah.
I want to do a little comparison. When we had the levy a number of years ago and we built new elementary schools here, we were pretty much landlocked. We knew where the space was and what we were going to do with it, but it was a little more wide open for what you were doing. I mean, you were essentially creating a new school district. Can you explain really how you're making this happen, buying a property and redistricting, how that worked?
Because Lakota is a school district within the confines of Liberty Township, and at the time it was called Union Township, now Westchester Township, we had 62 square miles. We had all of this land. And so we needed, Kathy and others, needed to meet with those who were willing to sell their property, willing to divest of something they held so important to them, because most of it was farmland, in order for us to find the right space to build another school.
And probably generations of farm
without a
owners.
doubt, yeah.
So how did you approach the owners of the land?
You know, it was get on the phone, see if they will invite you over to their home and sit down and have a conversation and explain what Lakota needs to be and why their particular land in this location is so incredibly important.
That's an interesting position to have. I'm not sure if many superintendents have that responsibility and try to, again, acquire land that, again, is so wide open. It's not just landlocked or we're changing this and moving this. How did that come across? How were you received by some of the folks there?
I'm sure there were some people who wouldn't return my call because they didn't want to have that conversation. They were not going to sell their property. But for those who saw what Lakota was trying to create with the right kind of educational program, I believe that they had many serious conversations with their family members and said, let's at least listen to her. Let's see what's on her mind. Let's see what we might be able to do. And one of my favorite stories is with a gentleman named Morris Van Gordon, because the Van Gordon family has been in Liberty Township forever. His wife was my secretary when I was assistant superintendent, and he had the right piece of property for a new elementary. So I call him up. He says, Kathy, come on over, sit down. We have a great conversation. And he said, I really don't want to do this, but I need to do this. I can't keep this farm going. I'm much older now. I need to divest of some of this. And I said, that would be wonderful. So our conversations continued. And in the end, what we decided we wanted to do was, number one, build an elementary school, because he didn't leave his home. He could see this elementary school out of all of his windows. We wanted to create an elementary school that in some way paid homage to him and his farming family. And so the architect, Mike Dingledine, Steve Hammond and Paul at the time, was able to create this beautiful building and incorporate a silo into it. And the silo was in honor of the Van Gordon family. And then, because we always had contests for students to say, what should we call this school? We decided it's the Van Gordon Elementary School. So
that's wonderful.
That was a way we could pay respect to Morris Van Gordon and their family for what they did to help Lakota.
It was meaningful for them, so it became meaningful for you. That's wonderful. So, wow. Now, that's the other part of this job. Now you're working with, like you said, Mike Dingledine at that time, Steve Hammond Paul in town, again, local ties to Hamilton,
Right.
With the Hammonds, Jerry Hammond. So were you involved at all with the architecture? Did you, I mean, you were working with Mike. You said is this the first time you had met Mike? He's a local guy. He grew up here.
Yeah. No,
No?
I knew of Mike.
Okay.
But when the first building he did for us was Freedom Elementary in Westchester. That's when I really got to know him. And then subsequently there must have been 8 or 10 other schools that his firm designed, but he was always the primary architect that worked with us.
Excellent, excellent. So how long were you superintendent?
12 years.
And during that time, you received a major award.
Yes.
You're going to talk to me. You're going to talk to me. I know how humble you are, Kathy, but you were Superintendent of the Year in Ohio, 1999,
Yes,
was it?
yes.
How did that come about?
Sandy Wheatley was a member of the Board of Education, and she came into my office one day and she says, Kathy, I have all this information, you're going to fill it out. And I said, Sandy, what's this about? She said, every state has a designated superintendent for that state. And then those 50 states and those 50 honorees get together, and a person is selected as the superintendent for the nation of the year. So anyway, long story short, there was all this paperwork, and we filled it out, and we sent it in, and I was fortunate enough to be selected.
It's fantastic. Superintendent of the Year in Ohio from 1999. I want to move on with your career, but I also want to kind of just jump aside a little bit. You also have this other hobby.
Walking?
Yes. Tell me now, excuse me. I know in your email I see the word walker. Was it last summer, the summer before, it's Sunday morning, I'm sitting on my front porch having coffee, answering email, and oh, there goes Kathy. Boom, 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 boom. Tell me about your walking. How did that start, and how did you incorporate that with at one point your with the schools?
I think I've always enjoyed being outside, and I like to do something that keeps me really active, and cycling was something that I had done for a while. And then it seemed to me there must be something else, and I learned about power walking. And so I and some friends got together and we took some lessons, so we learned how to power walk. Then we did it competitively for a while. And then that kind of went by the wayside, but I kept on walking, just normal walking, and just do it as often as I can.
Describe for me, I guess, what did you learn when you said you took lessons in power walking? Mm-hmm. What the form is of power walking, and then tell me about the competitions, please.
Well, I can't demonstrate it here, but it's in the hips.
Okay.
It's how you move in the hips.
Be fluid.
And yeah, and it's when your toes and your heel touch the ground. You can't run, you can't jog, and you can't walk. It's in between all of that. And so after we did our lessons, we thought, we're good enough, we can try this competitively. And sometimes we won in our age category, and sometimes we didn't, but we were out there having fun.
It's interesting. One of the events I ran, it was last year, in Hamilton Nyclo, and I was watching, I'm going at slow pace because I've never done a half before. And this person was power walking in front of me, and I was not going much faster than she was.
Yeah,
and she was power walking.
Yeah.
And
you can really zoom along.
And like you said, it has to be heel toe. It has to be heel toe.
Right.
But you incorporated walking, or at least walking was incorporated when you were trying to generate awareness for
Exactly.
in Lakota schools. Can you tell me about that?
Sure. We had a bond issue that we wanted to pass. It was incredibly important, and one of our principals said, you know, I can map out 26 miles. I can do that, a marathon, and we can walk it. And he said, I'll also work with my staff. This was a principal at Adena Elementary, Tony Bagshaw, and he created a t-shirt that said something about Lakota walks, whatever. And so a group of teachers, administrators met at a certain spot, and we walked 26 miles, and carried placards and wore our shirts, trying to say to our residents, we're doing this for the children because we need another school.
You're campaigning.
We were campaigning, we sure were.
And what a unique way to do it. So he tried to map out something to hit as many neighborhoods as possible.
Exactly.
And attract attention.
Right.
Did it?
And we won.
And you won.
Yeah, so it worked.
How was that walk?
Well, I will say as an aside, because I've been walking for so long, I find money. I have found over $800 walking, sometimes coins, sometimes dollar bills, $20 bills. Well, at the end of this marathon, I looked down and I thought, there's a nickel. I'm picking that up. I could barely bend over. It was all I could do to control my body, to get down there and pick up that nickel and get it back up. I was exhausted.
You hadn't done that before, the marathon? Well, I didn't realize it was so profitable to go walking. I guess I'm going too fast. I need to slow down, not the bike, not the run, but to actually walk. I can get some things paid off that way. And you continue walking.
Yeah.
Now I saw you again. It was serious. That Sunday morning. There's Kathy. Hi, Kathy. Do you have a specific route, or how do you work your walking into your day?
I try to do 2 hours as far as I can, as fast as I can. But sometimes I never make 2 hours. Sometimes I go over 2 hours. Oftentimes I also have a destination. Maybe it's the bank. maybe it's a friend, you know, whatever.
And you're walking every day, as much as you can?
As much as I can. I don't walk when it's under 17 degrees.
17.
Yeah, because I just.
Oh, there's a
get-
limit to everything,
yeah,
17
yeah,
degrees.
that's my limit, yeah.
That's impressive, because I think that's lower than my limit. Okay, so you were superintendent for about 12 years, and you ended up moving on, or did you retire? What was the
I
change?
retired. I really felt like I had accomplished what I wanted to do at Lakota, and it was time for new leadership. So I retired in 2005, and I was given the opportunity to go to Butler Tech. And so I went there as the Associate Vice President for Online Learning.
I want to get to the online learning. What was the draw for Butler Tech? What made that interesting for you?
Well, I knew I wanted to do something else. I wasn't ready to just sit down. And Bob Summers was the superintendent, and he said, Kathy, why don't you talk to me, and we'll see what we could do. And so he invited me over, and he said, I've got a couple of jobs. What do you think of this one? What do you think of that one? And I chose the online learning.
Online learning, 2005. What did online learning look like in 2005? Because we almost take it for granted today.
Yeah.
Careful.
Yeah, this was so well organized. Butler Tech had a cadre of teachers for all the different subject areas, and they literally taught everything. This is junior high, high school online learning. And these teachers met as a group. We had an area where we all met, and they had the curriculum that was state approved, that had been written and validated, and they would teach that curriculum to those students who would sign on. And my job, because I knew a lot of superintendents, was to travel Ohio. I had a car, and Bob Summers said, Kathy, just go. And I would go to this district and this district and this district and talk with superintendents about our program, about our certified teachers, and about the opportunities for students. Maybe they were very ill and couldn't attend school. Maybe they had some other situations going on in their life, and they just needed to have this kind of an experience. So we made that available across Ohio.
Which is interesting because, again, going through the pandemic without getting into a debate one way or another, we were kind of thrown into a situation where we weren't prepared to go online.
Yeah.
But this was specifically set up, the certifications and everything specifically set up for online learning.
Right.
So it's interesting, again, another little trail you've blazed, and throughout the state for locally, Butler Tech. And this was a job you held for about 6 years or so?
Right. And then, again, we were all looking at and assessing what we were doing, and Butler Tech was asking the question, do we want to continue with online learning? Maybe there's some other avenues that we're more interested in. And I was at the point where I said, yep, maybe I want to do something else too. So
you were there till 2011.
Right.
But before you left, you got interested in another area that isn't necessarily education, but involved with the community, where you got involved with city council. So that was what, 2009?
Right.
How did that come about?
Pat Mueller had run for mayor, and he was elected as our new mayor, and he had 2 years left on his term as a city councilman. And I was asked by the members of city council if I would consider completing his 2-year term. And so we had many conversations about roles and responsibilities, and I said, yes, I would do that. So I filled in for Pat in his last 2 years.
And we talked before, you made an interesting comparison for me, coming from education into service with city council. You compared city council and being a superintendent. Tell me that comparison again.
Well, it became apparent to me. A superintendent works with the Board of Education. The Board of Education develops the policy, superintendent implements. When I was on city council, I saw our city manager in the role of the superintendent and the city council developing the policies, and then the city manager implements. So I could see those direct parallels.
Interesting. So you're almost moving from superintendent into boards of
Yeah,
education
right,
in
right.
the city capacity.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So you started in 2009. You finished out Pat Moeller's term.
Right.
What happens next?
I decided I enjoyed myself so much, I wanted to run my own campaign, so I subsequently ran 2 campaigns. So I then had completed 10 years. And I said once again to myself, this is not a job for life. I've done what I think I can do, and I need to now back out of this so others can.
So you ran for what, 2 terms you said?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now during that time, okay, you've already finished council. I'm going back to where you were on council. We have a lot of things to discuss where you're on council.
Okay.
Some of the things that were innovative that you were involved with. You talked about superintendent, much like a city manager. How did you were involved when Joshua Smith was hired?
Right.
Is that correct?
Right.
Tell me about the plan that came out of that when council hired Joshua Smith.
It became very clear to us that, and as Joshua would say and his administrative team would say, we wanted a path forward. We didn't want to just think about how things should be done. We wanted to have that plan. So City Council and administration worked together to develop a strategic plan. And what was interesting to me, that strategic plan had 4 distinct pillars, 4 distinct areas that we wanted to focus on that would take the city forward. And I was asked to chair the pillar that was called Create a Sense of Place. And that was really talking about our neighborhoods, and it was talking about our downtown, and it was talking about our river area. And so I worked with my colleagues and chaired that, and we moved on.
So a sense of place.
Mm-hmm.
What progressed from there? I mean, that is, as you say, kind of creating an identity,
Yeah.
creating a sense of belonging,
Right.
hopefully a sense of pride.
Right.
And what developed out of that?
Well, there were lots of conversations among our community, and it became apparent that people were kind of catching on to that. But it was, after several years, just conversations. We weren't really, there were no results. Nothing was action oriented.
Right.
So I chatted with some others, including Brandon Sarber, and we began to explore, what do we need to do with this to make it make more sense? Well, one thing would be a board. If we had a board of citizens, they could give us some specific direction. If we had a budget, then we would have some dollars available, and maybe we could consider grants. So as we work to empower our residents and validate what they want to do in their respective neighborhoods, maybe with a board and a budget, we could make things happen and not just have conversation. Then that caused us to say, well then, instead of sense of place, this is morphing into 17 strong, because we have 17 distinct neighborhoods. And that's how we went from sense of place to 17 strong.
And I also, then where did you kind of jumpstart this, or maybe test run this idea of bringing the citizens of a neighborhood together?
Initially,
Yes.
Lindenwold. We decided Lindenwold was a microcosm of this city. Everything that's good, everything that we want to work on, everything that we care a lot about, it's right there in Lindenwold. So we were able to work with Linden Elementary and St. Anne's Elementary to send flyers home, inviting parents and residents to meet with us. So we're meeting in the cafetorium, have all these tables, and we have these big poster boards with scribes. And one says, Lindenwold in the past, Lindenwold in the present, Lindenwold in the future. And so we worked with all of those residents. We had close to 100 people come, and they were able to share all of their ideas, and all of their ideas were written down as they moved from the past, the present, to the future. We saved all that, and that then became kind of an outline for what we could do in other neighborhoods.
And so it spread, you started building 17 strong, identifying neighborhoods. Were you able to identify leaders in each neighborhood? I mean, again, you kind of jump-started this with Lindenwold. You had a leader there.
We did. And in other neighborhoods, it was a challenge, because you can't really do this effectively unless people trust you. We kept saying, it's not about the city doing anything to you or trying to tell you how to make change. It's about the city validating you. It's about the city saying, we want to empower you to have safe, clean, and engaged neighborhoods. And as we had those conversations, there were people who came forward and said, I'd like to help out. But there were other neighborhoods where the people said, I don't know you. I don't really know if I want to get involved with this. I'm not sure I trust you. And here we are in 2022, still working diligently in different neighborhoods, trying to establish that sense of trust so that people feel empowered and see the connections that come from chatting with their neighbors and chatting with neighbors in other neighborhoods, and makes a difference.
And I don't want to dwell on challenges too much, but I find it interesting you brought it up. Are there neighborhoods that seemed more estranged? Are there neighborhoods that are more transient? I mean, when you run into these issues, is that, I mean, because it's not, which is, again, part of 17 Strong, not everybody's the same. We don't want to all be the same.
That's right.
But, so you run into some of these issues?
We did,
Okay.
and we still do.
But it grows.
Mm-hmm.
But 17 Strong grows. And can you tell me about your hoodie you're wearing? That grows out of 17 Strong.
Absolutely. This is one of our slogans, we's greater than me. In other words, all of us working together will accomplish much more than just a single person. So Brandon Sarber created this, and we like to go to the Flea when the Flea's over here at Markham Park and have our table of swag and share that with people, share information about our neighborhoods, and invite neighbors to join us.
And I think what's interesting is it could have, some people could interpret, again, outlining and identifying certain neighborhoods that then it would separate people.
Yeah. No.
But it hasn't.
Right, and it can't.
It's brought, the idea is to bring together, there are different identities, but it's all part of one.
Right, and it's the respect of those in that particular neighborhood, their religion, their culture, their identity, their diversity. It's whatever they bring to the table. We want to celebrate that. It is about having a celebration of our communities, our neighborhoods, not separating them out.
Speaking of 17 Strong and celebrations, just happened to get a copy of the Hamiltonian that has the plan update,
Yeah.
the Hamilton plan update.
Yeah.
And the article here is the inaugural Kathleen Clinton Award. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I know you're modest, but last year I remember at the 17 Strong breakfast, they introduced this. Let me just read a paragraph. Named for one of Hamilton's tireless neighborhood advocates, Kathleen Clinton, the award was created to recognize exemplary leadership. And I'll just read a couple more sentences. In 2019, 17 Strong inaugurated the Klink Award for Neighborhood Leadership as a way to honor Kathleen Clinton, a tireless neighborhood advocate in Hamilton, and continue what she and others have started by promoting leadership and engaging one's neighbors for safe, beautiful, and connected neighborhoods. So this year will be, because we had to skip a year, this year will be the inaugural award, which will take place at the 17 Strong breakfast, which is coming up.
Right, it's at the end of March, last Saturday in March. Mm-hmm.
So this will be in your name, honored as someone who has taken that leadership into their neighborhood or gathered their leadership into that neighborhood.
And everyone in our entire community is eligible for this award. It doesn't mean you have to be on the board or you have to do this or do that. It's the person who's been working really hard. And so, yes, we will honor this next person.
I like that phrase. It's for someone who's been working really hard. They may not be the headline grabber, but they've been working hard in their neighborhood. Yeah. So we're excited for that. Now, your involvement also, starting with council, with what is now the Hamilton Parks Conservancy.
Yeah.
Used to be, we had a parks department.
Right.
Explain the change there.
It was probably 6 years ago that Joshua Smith said, you know, I am familiar with Pittsburgh and the fact that they have a Parks Conservancy. They once operated, the city of Pittsburgh operated their own parks like we currently do in Hamilton, but they moved over to a conservancy. Why don't we grab 5 or 6 people and go visit? So I was fortunate enough to be able to go along with these 5 or 6 other people. We spent a couple of days in Pittsburgh. talked with the city officials about the change, how it used to be, how it is now, then met with the Conservancy people and had the same conversation. And it appeared to us that that was something we could consider for Hamilton. It gave us a sense of independence. It allowed us to become a 501c3. It gave us the chance to kind of say, wow, all these possibilities are out here. How do we turn this into something great? So I was, again, fortunate enough to be on that board, and still am, as we move through the community, trying to address the parks as they are, as they were, and as they are today, and addressing our 2 golf courses because they're part of us. We were able to establish partnerships. We have art in the park, where we have teachers going out into the parks, inviting residents, young people in to do all kinds of crafts. We have movies in the park where we're able to invite people in to see movies. All of this because of partnership with the Hamilton Parks Conservancy.
Creating Conservancy out of what was once a Parks Department.
Exactly.
And of course, we can't mention the Parks Conservancy without saying the name Steve Timber.
That's right.
He was there in the beginning. He was one that traveled with you to Pittsburgh.
He did.
And you said, okay, we're going to do this.
If we do it his way.
Yeah,
And his way was the right way. Our parks are wonderful.
And it is amazing the turnaround of the parks, and you take such pride in them. We can now take pride in them. And going online, one of the things I really enjoyed exploring was finding all the parks.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many parks we have, and start looking at the map, identifying, finding a name of the park, and the different, again, like the neighborhoods, different personalities
Right.
of these parks and what
Right.
we've done with them. So we're
Right.
excited about that. You're also involved with TV Hamilton. Thank you
Yes.
for TV Hamilton for being here, broadcasting, and also for sharing. This is why TV Hamilton? This is, again, something different that you've been part of.
Well, when I was on the board for the Hamilton Community Foundation, there was conversation about TV Hamilton and where it was located, how it was being operated, and John Gaduli said, Kathy, would you be the rep from the foundation to work with TV Hamilton? And at that time, we had partners from Community First and Kettering Hospital. So we would meet and kind of discuss where we are, and as things go, things change. And so now we are looking at TV Hamilton a little bit of a different way. We have some new partners. We have exciting ideas. We have Jeff Archibald and Steve Caldwell, our executive director, who are the people who are able to get out in the community and showcase what's happening in town.
That's been exciting, actually, especially changeover social media, being able to go live,
Yeah.
being able to, because I used to be, for instance, a parade, film the parade, to go back and edit it,
Yeah.
takes so much time.
Right.
But now, again, the quick turnaround and being able to go live with different things and doing short segments
Yeah.
for social media. Hit the big points to be able to highlight. I was watching tonight on Facebook, again, some of the highlights of different communities with Mike Brimmer, our new executive director, or I'm sorry, our new president CEO of the YMCA, highlighting these things which we wouldn't normally see. And you've jumped ahead, or I jumped ahead, because I did also want to talk about your involvement at the Hamilton Community Foundation. How did that come about, your involvement there?
Quite a few years ago, I was asked to be on the board, and so I was until I was term limited and had to leave, but had the opportunity as chair to talk seriously with the individuals at the foundation about education. And so we formed an education subcommittee, which I still chair. And it's given us the opportunity to form some strong relationships with Hamilton City Schools, with Baden Schools and the other parochial schools, as a way, again, to say we honor and respect what's happening with public education, private education. It makes a difference to our community.
Again, your education experience brought into play. And then one more thing I'm going to bring up is the Hype Board. You're involved with the Hype Board.
Pastor Shack has worked diligently to address lots of needs and give opportunities to younger students to create her little place. I don't even know what to call it, but it's an after-school place for tutoring and games and relaxation for students right over here where the former Journal News was. And that's a board that is addressing all of those kinds of issues and concerns as we move forward again.
So what's next? What do you have
I don't
left?
We'll see.
We'll see. I love that attitude. We'll see. Well, I appreciate it, and I think we've driven home the point again with National Women's Day of what an innovator, a leader, educator, and community cheerleader you've been, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, but you know, it's not just a person, it's collaborating with others. That's why things happen. It's collaborating and having partnerships and working with individuals and organizations. That's what makes a difference. That's what makes me really proud about Hamilton and all that's happening, because it's a group of people who see the synergy that comes from collaborating and working together.
And everybody has to buy in, and a leader that shows that she's bought in, and everybody buys in and works together.
Makes a difference.
Makes a difference.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Very good.
It's fun.
I'd like to open it up for any comments or questions. If anybody has anything they would like to add or ask while we're here with Kathy tonight. Does anyone have anything? A few friends here that we see. Is anybody impressed? Yes. Very good. Well, I appreciate everybody coming out, and again, it is exciting, and again, some of these stories that didn't realize how they came about or how involved you are, but again, your humbleness of including everyone and also talking about your mentors through the way that you've been able to achieve a lot, and we thank you for what you've done for education and also for what you've done to our community. Ladies and gentlemen, Kathy Klink.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I'd like to thank Miami University Hamilton Downtown. I'd like to thank TV Hamilton for allowing us to be able to present these programs. We will continue them periodically, and I appreciate that we're able to share and also archive some of the great things going on in our community. So thank you very much. Good night. Excellent.